Hey everyone, welcome to WittCode, where in this video I'm going to be showing you how to redesign the Facebook login page using HTML and CSS. So this is the Facebook login page that I've made. You can see some of the functionality, like when I hover over things, clicking on boxes. You can see like the icons here moving around, some kind of background shadow. I've also copied this footer here. This is what the original looks like. So you can see this is the actual Facebook login page. And you can see they're very similar. There's a little, of course, like distances that are different, so I'm not too picky on that. But you can see the footer down here as well, similar to mine. And then also, this is responsive. So let's say I want to change the size of it. You can see it's everything's moving along, and we have a few breakpoints. You can see we have one around here, one here. Let's see if I get too small, everything stacks on top of itself. Another thing is I can change the height, and you can see we just adjust and we just get more of a scroll down. But so, let me bring it up here to give you a better view. I can even make it as small as possible, say like on a cell phone screen, and it still looks good. But so this is what we're going to be building in this video. So let's get started on making this. I'm going to be using VS Code as the editor, and let me just show you first. I have a few images that I'm going to be using. See if they show up in here. So you can see like it takes a bit to load. I have like my image which corresponds to this here. What else do I have? This logo right here, which is just the little kind of Facebook thing that I put up here. It's not as good as that one, but it's good. It'll do for this. And then also I have, I believe, the add user. So this here also corresponds to one of these login cards. So that's this image here. I didn't actually code this myself. And then, so that's that. So, but to get started, what we're going to do, let me close out of these ones. I'm going to work in the same folder that I did previously to make this. I'm just going to make new files. I'm going to call this one facebook.html. And then to get started on this, I'm just going to do an exclamation mark as a shortcut and press enter. And also, let me just zoom in a bit, just make this a bit bigger. Not too big though, like this. And then let's also create our CSS file. So I'm going to name that facebook.css. And then let's just close out of this and go in here. And then the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to change this title. So I'll show you what this does, but do Facebook. I'm going to change this to Facebook log in or sign up. And what this corresponds to, of course, is just this up here. And let me also just get this to display real quick. So what I'm going to be using to run this is an add-on with VS Code that you can install, or an extension through here. What I'm using is Live Server. So you can download that if you want to run it this way, because I'm just going to right-click on this and do Open with Live Server. And now you can see it's opened up here. And now let me just get this split screen. So you can see the updates happening in real time. But you can see we have Facebook, log in or sign up displayed up here right now. And for the next thing, let's link our CSS. So here I'm going to create a link element, and for the href, it's going to be .facebook.css. And this will make it so all our styling is going to be loaded in here from this external CSS file. And then next, what we're going to do is let's add this, change this default icon up here to this Facebook one that we have. And that is also done with a link tag. Let me do the shortcut again. Except instead of rel being style sheet, we change this to be icon. And then for the href, we change that to its logo.png. If I save that, you can see up here that we have this logo now. And now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a container or a div container to basically house everything. And the reason I'm going to be doing this is I'm going to be using Flexbox, and you'll see more of this in a second, but I'm going to be using Flexbox to align things, so I want everything within this Flex container to be Flex items. So this will basically surround, let me get rid of the actual Facebook, so this will be everything that surrounds all the stuff in here. So all this, like this here, it's all, except for the footer, is all surrounded by a Flex container. And so then let's go in here and let's make another div in here. I'm going to give this an ID of recent logins. And what this corresponds to is this here. So these two cards, these are recent logins, and these two cards are going to be housed within here. You'll see this more in a second. Now what I want to do is get this this Facebook logo. And the way I did that is of course is going to be an image tag. So I'm going to do img, and for alternative, let's just do Facebook logo, and that essentially means what will be displayed if the image isn't loaded. And then for source, I actually got this by doing like a inspecting the actual Facebook page, looking through the code, and just looking at the source like that. But so what I'm going to do in here though is I'm just going to use it from the old file. So I'm just going to copy and paste it from in here. Where is it? This source right here, this SVG. So this vector image. So I'm copying that. And then let's put that in for the source. And let's just make sure that loaded up. Cool, you can see it. So we'll style it, of course, to make it smaller. But now, after that, what we're going to do is we are going to make that title. I'm going to make this a div. I'm going to give it the ID title. And what we're going to just say in it is recent logins. Because, of course, this is what says over here, recent logins under the Facebook logo. And then under this div, we're going to create another div. And this ID is going to be subtitle. And this is what's going to say click your picture to add, or click your picture or add an account, like that. And so now I don't know if I think I said this, but we're going to just be focusing on the HTML right now, and then we're going to start styling after. So I'm going to get basically all the skeleton code up in here, and then we're going to decorate it with CSS. But so now let's start creating our cards. So what I mean by cards are these here. So the recent login cards of, add a user or just WittCode that shows right there. And for this, we're going to give it the ID of cards. This is essentially going to be a container that wraps these cards that we can use to align them the way we want to. And then we're going to have two cards. So the first one, I'm going to give it the ID card 1, which of course will be the WittCode one. And then within that, we have some more divs, one with an ID of cancel, which corresponds, I believe, to the X up here that we're going to be styling. So I made that a div. And then we're going to have that. And then, of course, inside it, we're going to have a little X. And then let's make another div. And for this, we're going to do an ID of notifications. And then this is going to be that red circle that says how many we have. And we're popular, so we're going to have 99 plus notifications. And then let's create an image. And for this, I'm going to give it an ID of, let's do card 1 image, because this is just going to be the image of me. And then for the source, it's going to be .me.jpg. And then for the alternative, which again is if it doesn't show up, let's just type in me. And then we're just going to do the username of whoever's logging in. And for this, we're actually not going to do an ID, but a class. Remember, classes can be applied to multiple things, whereas IDs mean like this element only. And then we're going to type in WittCode. So that's our skeleton stuff for our first card. So you might be able to see, oh wow, just notice that image is very big. So of course we're gonna have to style that. And then there's the username, so you can see how that can correspond to this card right here. So now let's go back up here. Let's start making our second card. So we have that one for just anyone to log in, and I'm going to give that the ID, you may have guessed it, just card 2, which is going to wrap all this stuff so we can position it properly. And then of course we're going to have an image, and this also give this an ID of card 2 image, and the source is going to be the add user PNG that we have. And then I'm just going to make this the alternative, something like add accounts. That'll show up if the image doesn't display. And then let's do another div, and for this the ID is going to be add account. And it's also going to have the class, because remember we use classes multiple times. It's going to have the class username, and then it's just going to say add account. So down here, this looks like a better size, so that's what we're going to have there. And then you can see, of course, we don't have the cancel and notifications on that one, because this, you can see here, this one does, but this does not. So let's go back in. And now let's start working on the box on the right, which is, well, here it's below. So it's this here, this login form. That's what we're going to be building here. And so we don't want that in our recent logins div, but we want this in our outside container because we're going to use Flexbox to make these basically line up next to each other. And let's do so where does this end? This ends right here. So let's make a div here. And we're going to give this one the ID of login. And then we're going to make our various inputs. So of course, this is where the user can type information in. And we're going to give it a placeholder that's going to say email or phone number. And you can of course see where that corresponds to here. And then we're going to have another input where the type is, this time it's going to be password. Meaning basically when you type in, it's going to be, instead of characters, it's going to be these little dots. So you don't know what the user is typing because that's sensitive information. And then we are going to type in here, no ID and no name. Don't know why I put those there, but just a placeholder, which is going to be password. And that's, of course, like I said, that's just what shows up here before you've typed anything in. And then we also need another input, except this type is going to be button. And to set the text on a button, we use the value key, and we're going to set that equal to login. And this is actually going to have an ID, and it's going to be login button. And now let's add the forgot password and the create new account and all that. So that's going to be an A tag or an anchor tag. And we're going to do a hashtag in here, which basically means that when you click on it, it's not really going to take you anywhere. And then inside of it, we're just going to say forgot password, question mark. Let me actually go back to this. So you can see we have our inputs, all not styled, of course. And we have forgot password as this link. We click on it, it just adds a hashtag here. It doesn't actually take us anywhere. Of course, we're going to be styling this more. And then we're going to add an HR, which is essentially just a line. And it's going to be, we're going to do an internal style actually real quick of 95%. Save that. And so you can see we have a line here, and it's 95% because by default it would span the whole way across, but instead we're just spanning 95% of the way across. And then finally, we are going to create another input, but no name, or we will have an ID on this one, but the type for this is once again going to be button, and the value for this is going to be create new account, and the ID will be create new account like this with hyphens. And then finally, let's make sure that was down here. Yep, so we have this. And then finally, we are going to have a paragraph tag, and we're going to use the strong tag to surround create a page. Because if you look on here, strong basically just makes it bold. So you can see we have create a page is bolded. So we're going to nest that. It's an inline tag because it doesn't span the whole way across, whereas a paragraph is block, which means it essentially takes up a whole line. But anyway, we're going to do that, and then we are going to say for a celebrity and or business, like WittCode. WittCode is business. And then, so we've got all that here, and now let's go down outside of this div, and we're going to create our footer. So our footer actually is not going to be inside of our container here. This is just going to be used to align these two, like basically when it's smaller, we're going to use that container to make sure these stack on top of each other, and not we're going to make it this container, make it so they're next to each other. This footer is going to be outside of that, and it's basically always going to be fixed to the bottom of the screen. And you'll see more on this, of course, later. I'm going to create a div inside here, and then what I'm actually going to do is a lot of this is just hard-coded text. So I'm going to go into the old HTML file that I made in here, and I'm going to just copy and paste this in here, and then I'll tell you what it does real quick. So paste all this, and so you can see we have an HR tag. We have the width set to 100% because I believe I'm going to have some CSS styles inside this that will probably change the width of this. And then you should know that inline styles are get precedence over these ones from in here. So this will override whatever we put in here for an HR tag, this will override it for this one specifically. And then we also have BR, which is like a break line, which basically just adds like a new line character essentially. So you can see all this here. We have like the HR here, and then we have a new line. So sign up for business is where another new line comes in. Then we have two new lines here between the Facebook. But so this was all our HTML. So now you can start seeing, this is where it gets cool because you'll see this basically change as we work along. So let's start doing that in here. So the first thing I'm going to do at the top of this page, which you might see is pretty common, is something called a wildcard. And basically what this means is apply this to every single element. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make it so everything has a margin of 0 and a padding of 0. And what this is called is a CSS reset. And basically the reason a lot of people do this is because different browsers use different default margins. So we're going to set them to 0 so that our website margins and padding will not look different on different websites. So it's basically a way to like set a baseline for our website being used on different browsers. And then we also want to set the font family to be, I got this from Facebook's source code. I just inspected it and saw what it was, but what they use is Helvetica, and then if not, they default back to Arial and then sans serif. So basically it means if look for this font, if you can't get it, then use Arial, and if not, use sans serif. So you can see the font looks more like the Facebook one now. And then the next thing that you might see a lot of people do is this right here, box sizing to border box. And what this does is it makes it so every element in our website, for every element in our website, the padding and margin that we add to it are included in the width and height. So what this basically means is if we set the height of a div, for example, to 300 pixels, let me close this actually real quick. If we set a height of a div to 300 pixels and then we give it a padding of 50 pixels, the height will still be 300 pixels. Where if we didn't have this, the height would be 350 because the padding would be added on. So you'll probably see more, this will probably make more sense as we go along, but that's what we're doing for now. And now let's style our body tag. So what we're going to do here is we're going to make it so the background color is hexadecimal F0, F2, F5. So that's what we're going to make the body color, so you can see it went a little bit grayish. Then what we're also going to do is we're going to set the position of the body to relative. And this is basically so we can absolutely position certain elements inside of it. So you'll see more of this as we go along, and also I have a video on CSS positioning if you want to check that out to learn more about this. But essentially if you use an absolute element, by default position here will be static. So if we set it to relative though, we can use absolute elements inside of it. But you'll see more on that probably as we go along. Don't want to confuse you too much. Then we're also going to set the height to 115 viewport height. And what this essentially does is so that we can, I'm making this so we can scroll to see the footer. So it's going to add, because the height by default will be the viewport height is like 100%. If we make it more than the viewport, then there will automatically be a scroll bar, which is why I'm using that so that we can scroll all the way down to see the footer. You'll probably see more of this as well as we go along. And then I'm going to also set overflow in the X direction to hidden. So this should hide this scroll bar here. So you can see that's gone now. And the reason I did that is actually because when this scroll bar appears here, this actually adds width to your page, so you'll get a horizontal overflow. So what I'm going to do is I essentially made it so that the horizontal overflow is gone. And now the next thing we're going to be working with is going to be our container. And so because this is an ID, we use the hashtag. So this corresponds to, of course, this container right here. And so what we're going to do is the first thing we're just going to make it, the display of it flex. And this will make it so every item inside here is a flex item, which basically means we can use Flexbox properties to style it. And Flexbox is just a nice way to, in my opinion, it's just a nice way to style things, and it makes things easier and works with free space and stuff like that very well. But now let's style our recent logins. So this is another ID that corresponds to these, and this will of course correspond to our recent logins, which is this stuff here, and our cards. So what we want to do with these is also set the display to flex so we can easily align the elements, and you'll see this more. So the first thing we want to do is align the elements, the flex direction, to be column. And this makes it so these essentially stack on top of each other. By default, it's row. So if I change this to row, for example, you can see that, well, we can't see because we got rid of the overflow here, but I think if I can comment this out, now you can see that everything has shifted over inside here, so it's all in a row-like fashion. But we want this, first we want our overflow to be back, and we also want this to be column, so that everything is stacked on top of itself. And then we're also going to set the position here to relative as well, for the same reason for absolute positioning. And also, by default, position here is static. And if it's static, we can't use properties like left, bottom, right, and top, which basically just make you allowed to move your elements wherever you want to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move it 20 view width. So it moves it so this right here is 20% of this whole viewport's width. So we're going to add a distance on the left of 20 view width. And then what we're also going to do is we're going to add a top of 13 view height. So you can see also now everything has moved down because we have 13% of this whole viewport as a space right here. And then another thing we're going to do is we're going to have a margin right of 30 view width. And of course that just will add a margin onto the right of 30 view width. And I'm going to be moving, I'm going to be changing the size of these soon, so this will make things a lot better. So actually let's do that with our Facebook logo right now. So what I'm going to do is the Facebook logo, which has the ID Facebook, we're going to set the height to be 70 pixels, and we're going to set the width to be 198 pixels. And then what we're also going to do is we're going to do a margin of minus 20 pixels. So you can see that this actually didn't do anything, and so I think that's because we must have forgot the ID. Yeah, so we don't have an ID here. So let's give this the ID Facebook, save it, and there we go. So now this looks a better size, and we'll do this picture soon so everything will look better as well. But so let's go back in, and now let's style. So within our recent logins, what this means here, let me show you in a second, is recent logins. So that's an ID because we're using a hashtag. That means this div here, an element directly in it, so with the ID of title. So see how title is right here. For example, if we had, if this was in another div, like see how it's nested and this is like this, then this would not pertain to that because this says it's directly inside it. With this is directly inside recent logins. This right here, this ID Facebook, but this one is not. So that's what that little caret symbol means there. Let me get rid of that. So if we wanted, yeah, I'll just leave it at that for now. But so what we want to do with that is we want to make it so, change the font size first to 28 pixels, and then we're going to do the font weight to be normal, which essentially makes like I'm not bolded or anything. And then we're going to specify a line height of 32 pixels. And then we're going to do, and this means basically just how tall the text, or how tall a line is. Like you have a line of all this text, for example, like see this gray line here, this one here. This 32 pixels would make this line up move up, so it's 32 pixels. That's essentially what it means. And then we're going to add a margin top of 20 pixels, and a margin bottom of 5 pixels. Cool, so that looks a bit better there. And now once again we are going to use our little caret symbol, so recent logins, but this time directly within there the ID subtitle. So that will be, of course, this right here, because it's the ID subtitle directly within the ID recent logins. What we're going to do with that is we're going to set the color to be, I got this from the website, or Facebook website again, but 606770, another grayish color. We're going to set the font size to 15 pixels, how big the font is, the line height again to 15 pixels, a margin bottom of 20 pixels, and a font weight of 400 pixels, or 400, sorry, just 400. So cool, and that's what we can see right here. Click to add your picture. I believe that's what the subtitle is. Yep, so we've changed the color and made everything there look good too. And now let's work with our cards container. So I named it cards, and we're going to make this flex. So the cards, of course, are card 1, card 2, which correspond to these here. And this is where we're going to be, this is our container for both those cards. And we're making it flex so we can align them like as a row like this and everything. So you'll see those properties being used in a second. So let's first do what we're going to do here is we're going to do a shortcut because these will be the same styles for both card 1 and card 2. We could have done a class, but we also have some individual things we need to add. But this comma basically means for card 1 and card 2, do the same thing here. And what we're going to do is position relative, because we're going to have some absolutely positioned things inside it. And we're going to set the background color to white. So you can see already we have a little white spot right here. And then we're going to add some more nitpicky things. Margin right of 10 pixels, a border radius of 5 pixels, which border radius basically is what will give it curved edges. So you can see we have a little bit of a curved edge here now. And then we're also going to do margin right of 20 pixels. And now something we're going to do that's cool is we are going to do the same thing, card 1, but we're going to do a hover. I'll explain this more in a second. And we're going to do a card 2 hover. And this basically means hover is whenever you move the mouse over it, this is what you want to happen. And what we want to do is something that's cool called a box shadow. And what this does is it basically adds a shadow to div elements. And the arguments for this, and by shadow, I mean like, see how when we hover over these, you can see that like thing up here behind? That's what we're going to be doing. So we are going to, the way to do this is first argument is a horizontal offset, which basically means do you want to move it left or right? We don't. We want it right behind the image essentially. And then it's the vertical offset, and we want it 8 pixels bottom and above. And then the next is the spread, or sorry, the next is the blur, which is basically how much we want it to blur. And we want it to blur by 16 pixels. And then the final is the spread, and we don't really want it to spread at all. And then next is the color of it. For this, I'm going to use a function called RGBA, and I'm going to pass in 0, 0, 0, 0.2. And this here, so this of course is red, blue, green, like how much we want it red, blue, and green. And this here is 0.2, means the opacity of it. And then what we also want to do when we hover over these is we want to change the cursor to be a pointer. So you'll see this. So when we hover over this, see how it changes to that little hand instead. We want to do that. And then what we also want to do is we want to do transition on our box shadow. So we're going to do transition, box shadow, and then 0.3 seconds. So this basically means apply this box shadow here, but for the duration of 3 seconds. So do this within, like it takes 0.3 seconds for it to come fully into effect essentially. So when we drag it over here, the box shadow takes a bit. And we'll see this clear, I think, as I change this image. So let's do that real quick. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to do card 1 image, and also card 2, sorry, no, just card 2 image like this. And what we want to do with these is a height of 160 pixels and a width of 160 pixels. Awesome. And so I probably should have done that in the beginning, but you can see this has cleared that up a lot. So these are both a lot smaller now, and you can kind of see this coming together. So you can see this looks similar to how it does in the old thing. I probably should have changed that in the very beginning. But anyway, then we're going to do border top left radius of 5 pixels, And then border, I don't think there's a way to do a shortcut for this, but border top right radius of 5 pixels. So this will make it so that we have curved edges on this image. So you can see we have only it's not curved here at the bottom left and bottom right, but it is up here on the top left and top right by 5 pixels. And then the final thing I want to do right here is just for our add account, let's make the color to be in hexadecimal 166FE5, which is like a little blue. And so of course that changed our text here to be blue. And now let's style our usernames right here that are at the bottom of both of our cards. So if you remember, we gave them both the class username. So we have class here username and class here username. So to style a class, we do the dot syntax. So dot username. And then what we want to do in here is let's first set the font size to be 18 pixels. We'll set the line height to be 22 pixels, which remember is like basically how big or how tall the line is. And then we're going to set the padding all around on each side to be 12 pixels, which of course affects like inside of the box. And because we have, what is it, the very top box size and the border box, this won't change the height at all of any of this. It'll still stay the same height, which is very useful and a common practice, but of course not everyone does it. And then let's do text align center. So you can see now our text is right in the center. And then let's also do a color. We're going to use RGB this time. Now we're going to do 75 for red, 79 for green, and 86 for blue. And now let's work with our notifications, which will be the red, like this red up here with the 99 plus. So in here, we gave that the ID notifications. And what we're going to first do is change the background color, use RGB, and we're going to do 236, 58, and 58 is the color. See that shortcut, which gives it, of course, that red there. And then next we're going to do the color of the text, which you do by color. We're going to make that white. And then we're going to do the position to be absolute. And so absolute positioning only works if you do it inside a positioned, or it works inside the nearest positioned parent container. And that is why we have been using position relative at times. Like for example, in our cards, the position is relative, because if this was static, then it would be absolutely positioned to the next element. So let's see actually if this, if we comment this out and save it, it didn't do anything there, but just know that it'll position itself to the nearest positioned element. So that's why that's more an absolute positioning. Again, if you want to learn more about that, watch that video. I'll leave a link in the description. But then we're going to do right of -5 pixels like this, so that we move it all the way to the right, and then -5 so it hangs off a little, because in here we have it hanging off a little bit of the card. And also we want it to also hang up a little on the top. So we'll do -5 pixels there. And then we're going to do a border radius. This is a cool trick of 50%. So to create a circle in CSS, you use the border radius property and you set the value to 50%. And then you also combine the height and width properties with a matching value. So then we set height. Here we're doing 25 pixels and width 25 pixels, and that should make a perfect circle. So now you see we have that perfect circle there. And then we're going to align the text to the center. We're going to add a line height of 25 pixels, and this is a way to center text vertically, is you can use line height. And what you do is you make the line height the same as the height of the container. So the height here is 25 pixels. If we set line height 25 pixels, then the text will be centered vertically. And then we're going to change the font size to be 12 pixels like that. And that is not a perfect circle because I forgot to put pixel there. There we go. So that looks better. And now let's work on our cancel button, which is that little X. We gave it the ID cancel, and we're going to set the position of that to absolute. And then we're going to make it left of 8 pixels So you can see it's moved in here. And now these are the same height because absolute takes it out of the normal document flow. So this all moves up as if it's not there essentially. And then also we change the color to white. We are going to do a top of 5 pixels, and then we're going to make it border radius 50%, because we're going to make this a circle again. You'll see in a second. And then a height 20 pixels. We're going to align the text in the center. We're going to add a width 20 pixels because we're making that circle again. A background color of RGB, and this time 63, 62, 62, which is like a cool black. You can see it like that. And then we're going to set an opacity of 0.5, which basically makes it see-through a little. So you can see it's a little bit see-through. And so now let's make it so when we hover over our, you'll see it over here, when we hover over this card, see how we get this to move out like this? Let's work on doing that. And so the way to do that is we use, first let's use the ID card1 hover, and then what we want to do is we add a space and we do cancel. And this is saying on when we hover over card1, style this cancel element like this. And what we're going to do is we're going to change the background color to white. We're going to make the opacity 1.0 so it's not see-through anymore. We made the color RGB of 194. Man, it's kind of annoying. 194. Oh. 194 and then 193, 193 like this. And then we're going to do the height. We're going to make it a circle still, but we're going to make it a little bit bigger. 25 pixels, width of 25 pixels, a line height 22 pixels, and then just some more positioning. So top, left, save it, see what it looks like. And of course this is going to be when we hover, so you can see it already moves out and looks different. And then we're going to also change the font size to be 25 pixels, and we're going to make a transition now of 0.3 seconds. So basically means when we want all these styles to be applied within 0.03 seconds. So you can see it takes a bit of time to move out there. While if we just got rid of this, for example, say I just deleted this, you can see it just jumps. But here, when we add a transition, you can see it smoothly moves. Cool. And now we get to start with our login form. So all this stuff over here, this form here is essentially now what we're going to be making from all this mess over here. And what we're going to do is we gave it the ID of login, and we're going to set the position to be relative so we can do some absolute positioning inside of it. We're going to set the background color to 6 Fs like that. And then we're going to make the height 350 pixels. We're going to make the width 400 pixels. We're going to add a border radius of 10 pixels. We're also going to make the display to be flex so we can do some cool flexbox alignment and stuff. We're going to make the flex direction to be, because we made this display flex, it put everything as a row, if you remember, but we want it all as a column. So once again, everything is stacked on top of itself. And we also want to add a top of 18 view height, which you can see has moved this down more. And then what else do we want to do? Then we want to justify the content to be flex start, which basically means at the start of the container. And this is another flexbox property. So because display is flex, we can use this justify content. And then let's add some padding. We're going to do 10 pixels on the, how does it go? I think it goes top right, bottom left. So 10 on the top, 10 on the right, 20 on the bottom, 10 on the left. So you can see everything's been padding, added some padding to it. And then we're going to do align items and set that to center. And what that does is it makes it so, so you guessed that everything is central, but also align items real quick works on whatever the flex direction is. This is the main axis. So the main axis here is in the Y direction. So align items will what this does, it works on the secondary axis with display box. So this will make it so everything will be aligned horizontally because the main axis is column, so it's vertically. That's just a little cool thing to know about Flexbox. And then let's add a box shadow of 0 for the offset. I think it's horizontally, 5 vertically or up and down, a spread of 5 pixels or a blur of 5 pixels, and a spread of 3. And let's do the color Gainsborough. So you can see we have this little background now, which makes it basically look like it's floating. And now let's style our anchor tag, which is basically this link here. And the first way we're going to style it is we're going to do an anchor tag that's a direct child of this login form. Remember, whenever this means essentially that it's right inside. So when we go to login, you can see there's an anchor tag directly within here. It's not nested in another element. But what we want to do with this is we're going to give it a margin, just some nitpicky things, on top and bottom of 18 pixels and 0 on the left and right. So you can see it added a little bit of space. We're going to do text decoration to none to get rid of that underline. We're going to set the font size to 15 pixels. I'm going to set the color to be this specific hex value here. Cool, so it's that nice little blue. And then we're going to do also, we're going to give it a hover. And we're going to make it so when we do hover, then we add a text decoration, which is the underline. And we also make the cursor a pointer. So when we move over now, we get a nice underline and we get a cursor as a pointer. And now let's style our line tag over here. So the way I'm going to do this, also real quick, let me just show you what this looks like full screen. So you can see it looks a lot better. I haven't done like the media queries, which I'll do in a bit, to make it so it looks nice when it's a small screen. But I guess I just wanted to show you that because right now it looks kind of out of place. But so we've done that, and now let's style our H tag, which is that line, and we're going to give it a width of 95%, which percent means of the parent. So it means 95% of the width of its parent, which is this login container. We're going to set the height to 0.1%. We're going to do background color of RGB, not this, should not do that thing, of 194, 183, and 193, like that. And then we're going to do a border. You can see it kind of has like a little extra line in a way. That's a border. If we set that to none, you can see that's disappeared. So, and now let's start working with our inputs. So login, what we want to style is directly inside of that an input tag where the type equals, no quotes, equals text, and then also login directly where the input, where the type equals password. What we want to do with these, so this means, so these are our inputs here, and we have types, right? So we've got a type of text and a type of password. So we don't want to style our button type, but we want to style our text and our password this way. And we're going to give them a height of 35%, margin of 8 pixels on the top and bottom, 0 on the left and right, border radius of 5 pixels, padding left of 10 pixels, font size of 16, and a width of 95% of the parent. Cool, so you can see these are starting to come together a bit. And then also we are going to do a border of 1.5 pixels, and it's going to be solid EEEF0. So cool, so that's made it a little bit more, the colors suit it more, I guess I should say. And now let's add some specific style to just our password one. So direct input element where the type is password. We want a bigger margin there. So I'm going to do margin bottom 12 pixels because I just want to add a little bit of a bigger one between this login button and that. And then next thing we're going to do is add some focus. So I'll show you that in a sec. So the type equals text. We want to add a focus to to that, and also when it's password. And so this focus basically means is when you've clicked in it. So when you've clicked in that, you can see we get some style changes. So that's what this focus is going to be doing. And what we want to do is we want to have an outline. We don't want any outline. So you see that black is gone when we've clicked on it. But we want a border 1 pixels, and we want it solid blue. So when we click on this, we get a blue solid border. And then we also, let's add a box shadow of 0, 0, pi pixels for the blur. And then this color, another specific one, ECE. Cool. So then see we have that little like shadow going around it now too when it's focused. And then this is a cool thing I didn't know existed, but carrot color. And we're going to set that to blue, and that's the cursor. So see how the cursor is blinking right here? That's blue. And then you can change that color by using this thing here, carrot color. Now let's just style our one of our buttons. So the login button, we're going to set the background color of that to F2, so that kind of cool blue. We're going to make the color of the text to be pure white, which is all those Fs. We're going to set the font size to be 20 pixels. We're going to give it rounded edges with a border radius of 5 pixels. We don't want a border on it, so we're going to set that to none. And then we also want to do a height of 120 pixels to make it bigger, a font weight of bold, so the text is bolded, and then a width of 95% of its parent, so that makes it a little bigger. And then also a that's all we want to do in there, but we do want to add a hover on that thing as well. So to do that, of course, we use hover, and we're just going to change the background color to be a different shade of blue, FE5, like this. So when we hover, you can see it changes to like a darker blue. And then we're also going to change the cursor to a pointer to make it basically more interactive. And now let's work with our create new account button. So we're going to create new account, and we're going to make the background color of this to be 42B72A, another specific one. And we're going to make the text color to be all white again, font size to be 18 pixels, the border radius 5 pixels, no border, so border of none, a height of 100 pixels, a font weight bold, so our text is bolded, a width of 60% of the parent's width, and a margin top 20 pixels. Cool, so you can see how that came together. And then let's add a hover to this one as well. So we're going to do hashtag create new account, and hover. And when we hover over it, we want to do the background color of 36A420 and a cursor to be a pointer. Let's see, also let me make the screen bigger again, see how it's coming together. Cool, so you can really see how it looks a lot better now. So this looks pretty similar already to this. We just gotta move some more things, and I'll do the interactiveness for size when we implement those media queries. But now let's style that paragraph tag, and we're going to do the font size to be 15 pixels. We're going to do the position to be absolute, and this is so we can move it basically within. You can see because this is position relative, this container here, because we set this to absolute, it took it out of the normal document flow and basically put it inside of the nearest parent container that is positioned or does have position anything other than static, which is this container, which is why it moved to the top left. Hope that made sense. And then what we're going to do is this is to make it so we can move it underneath. So we do -55, and now you can see it's all the way under here, because it means -55 pixels of its parent element, which is this thing. So it's 55 pixels below it. And now we can start styling our footer. So what we're going to do, which our footer, of course, is just this thing down here. And what we're going to do is first you can see the background color is all white. So we're going to do this. We're going to make the position of that to be absolute as well. We're going to set the bottom to be 0 so that it sticks to this, because bottom of 0 basically means no space between this and the bottom of its nearest position element, because once again our body is set to relative, so this moves all the way down there. I think if this would be a good example of this. If we set the body position, if we get rid of this, yeah, you can see it's moved now because the body is no longer a positioned element, but now it is. So absolute takes effect, and the bottom is 0. And then let's do a width of 100, just because, and then a padding of 20 pixels all around. Let's change the font color to be A6, A8AA. Cool. And then let's increase the font size a little. Let's make a margin top. This will come in handy in a bit, of 100 pixels. Display to be flex, so we can move things inside it. And let's do justify content to be center. Cool, looking better. And then word spacing is how much space you want between words. We want 12 pixels. And then we want a line height. You can see line height well here as well, 20 pixels. So you can see everything kind of like increased itself in size. Or each of these, like you can see there's like basically more space between each of them. It's kind of like a padding in a way. So this should actually be good to go now for a regular size. So you can see as a regular size, this looks pretty similar to the original. So we can move this. If we move it some where it's like too close together, everything will get messed up. But you can see it looks pretty good so far when we move things around. This is where we've got to add more responsiveness, but it doesn't look too bad right now. Let's go in here and let's start adding some media queries. And the first one we're going to do is to do media queries. We're going to do @media and screen, which essentially means the screen. And then we want for the type of screen, and we're going to do max width of 1114 pixels. And what this essentially says is whatever we put in here, apply those styles when the browser width is 1114 pixels or less. And so one of those is in our recent logins, we want the left. These are like some nitpicky things I went through to find. And we want our margin right to be 22 view width. And we also want login right to be 30 pixels. And you should see now when we move this so the width is less than 1014, it should adjust accordingly. So yeah, you can see this jump right here, and you can get the width of the browser. If we do this and we do window.inner width, you can see we get 1120. So it hasn't been applied, but then if we do, where is this? And then if we do in here, you can see that we had that jump. That's because it's not showing up. Let me try and just do this again. If we do this and we do window inner width, we're at 1048, which of course that's why the style was applied, because that's less than 1114 pixels. But anyway, so let's keep that like this. And then now let's work on our next media query. Let me just full screen this again. Go back in here. And now this is going to be a big media query. So we're doing media screen. And this one's going to be max width of 900 pixels. What we want to do is first we're going to set the body. We're going to change the height of that to be 150 view height. And this is so we can have more of a scroll bar that we can like, this will be at the bottom. Because when this is smaller, so say, I think I did 900. So when this is 900, you can see the height changes quite a lot. So we get all the way down here. So that's what we wanted to do for that. and then, but let's go back in. And then we also want to change our container. We want to make it so the flex direction is column. We want to align our items to be center. Remember, this is the secondary axis, as I said earlier. We want to justify our content, this will be the main axis. We want them all to be centered. And then we also want to style our recent logins. This is some more nitpicky stuff. But a margin right of 0, the secondary axis of, we want that to be centered. We want our left space of 0 on the left and a top of 20 pixels. So actually I should probably make this so it's less than 900 pixels. So when it's here, this is when it's less than 900. Let's check by, if we open up our console and do window.inner width, we get 872. Cool, so let's leave this here, and this so we can see more so what's going on. I feel like I kind of rushed through that, but we could see this is basically just some nitpicky things kind of at the moment. And so I just realized that actually the reason this was looking so good, I was kind of thinking that as we were moving along, is because I was clicking on the wrong tab. So this is the one here. Now you can kind of see how it didn't look good when we were moving things around. You see everything's off center and everything, like nothing's centered. So that's why we're adding all this stuff here. So my apologies for that, but so that's something I missed. But where this is less than 900, we're going to start seeing some changes here. And the first is going to be our card 1. We're going to set the margin right to be 5 pixels. And then we're going to do card 2. This is all more just nitpicky stuff to make it look cleaner. So I'm sure you understand what this stuff is doing. And then we're going to do a login container. We're going to align our text center. We're going to do a left of 0. So everything basically flushes over to the left. We're going to do a margin right of 0. We're going to do a margin top of minus 30 pixels, and then a top of 80 pixels. Cool. And then let's start working with our recent logins again. And also is it recent logins or is it recent login? So you can see it's recent logins, plural, and then also our login. So both of those, we're going to change the position to be relative. Cool. And then finally, we are going to work with our footer. And we're going to set the position of that to be absolute. Oop. And we're going to do padding of 20 pixels and a width 100 view width, just to make sure. And so that was all mainly like some nitpicky details. This is one that's really important that'll clean a lot of things up, is we are going to do a media query with the height this time. So we're going to do, we did width for the other ones. Let's do one for a max height of 670 pixels. And we're going to do a footer. And we're going to set the position to relative. So hopefully that moved it. Awesome. So you can see that's out of the way. And then we're going to set a top of 100 pixels to move it down. But cool. So I think that is just about everything. Sorry if I kind of rushed through those media queries right there, but a lot of this stuff I feel like was just to kind of like some nitpicky things. But if let's double check that we have the whole thing looking okay. So everything's looking pretty good from what I see at least. And then if we move it here, everything moves into place. We can move everything around here. Awesome. What happens if we move this up? Sweet. So it's pretty responsive. Everything I'd say looks pretty good. That would work on a phone. But so yeah, this is me creating the Facebook login page. This is actually a bit more challenging than I thought it would be. So if you have any questions, I'm going to try and put this up on GitHub. I've been having some issues at the moment with multiple accounts I have, so that's why a few of my videos aren't up on there, but I'm trying to get that sorted. And when I do, though, I'll put this up. But yeah, if you have any questions or anything, let me know. But besides that, I guess thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. If there's any other website you want me to try to redesign, just let me know, and I'll do it. I find these are fun, and it's good practice. But so, see you in the next video. Thank you.